Welcome back to a new episode of The Big Three, the monthly podcast where we break down the biggest stories shaping influencer marketing and the creator economy. I'm your host, Ceci Carloni, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Ahene, founder of Net Influencer. Nice seeing you again. How's everything going?
Pretty good. Yeah. Super excited about getting 2026 underway. Gonna hit the ground running fast. We'll be at CES the first week out of the year. So yeah,
Exciting.
right into the fire. Right into the fire.
Awesome. Glad to hear. We have some great stories this month. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Sounds good?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, story number one is about trust. It's a story from Harvard Business Review about how to do influencer marketing that customers actually trust. The story basically pushes back on a narrative we hear all the time that influencer trust is declining. It basically argues that authenticity isn't something that an influencer either has or doesn't have. It's something that gets co-created over time through interactions between all the players. I mean, creators, brands, agencies, and audiences. So when a campaign fails, the issue isn't that audiences suddenly stop trusting creator, is that the process breaks down. In other words, trust doesn't disappear, it gets eroded when brands treat influencer marketing like a media buy instead of a relationship. So I'm curious to hear, Ni, what's your take on this? Do you think that the trust in creators is actually declining? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I don't really think that trust in creators is declining. I think the opportunity for brands to interject their message with a creator audience, it's more than just saying, okay, this creator has an audience and they have engagement, and so we're going to do a collaboration. I think what's important for brands to think about is a concept that I'm starting to play around with called content audience fit, right? So similar to product market fit, it's about thinking about the content that you have, whether you're a creator or a brand, the audience you're trying to engage, and ensuring that there's a tie between what you're trying to produce and what you're trying to say in that audience. And I think in 2026, I'd be excited for brands to think about their content and ensuring that you can't just take the same activation and drop it across 100 different creators or even 10 different creators.
Exactly.
Each creator needs to think about their particular audience and how they're going to react to a particular product and ensure that the message is in line with that. So thinking about content audience fit or CAF is something that I encourage all brands to think about, because when that happens and there's a good alignment between those two things, you start to get a lot
Yeah.
of good dividends from potential campaigns. And so yeah, I don't think it's trust going away. It's more about making sure there's relevancy tied to the message of the product or service that you're trying to promote with creators that are strongly aligned with that particular product or brand.
Okay, so the playbook has to be different for every activation, right? I think the question that I want to ask you, do you think we're seeing the consequences of, or maybe that brands need to stop treating influencer marketing or using the same playbook than other channels for influencer marketing?
Well, I mean, I think it's less about that. I think that brands need to understand why they're selecting the creators they're selecting, and they need to
Okay.
understand why that creator is getting traction. And then they need to figure out what is the best opportunity for our brand to show up in a way that is in alignment with how this creator has built their audience. And that takes a lot more work, right? It's very easy to go inside of a Creator IQ or a YouTube analytics system and say, okay, this person has 2 million views per video. So we want to go ahead and do an activation and we're going to pay them X CPM without thinking about that alignment. I think that alignment is the unlock. And if that means that you have to spend more time to unlock value, that investment up front is worth the time. And so seeing more technology, seeing more processes, seeing more thought leadership about how to do that in a good way is really where I think the industry needs to go to be able to ensure that we're not in this trust deficit.
Okay. I also think that we don't need to lose sight of the human aspect of the creator, right? Like connecting with the human side of the creator, with how they connect with their audiences and all of that. Again, I think this is a people industry, and it's the relationship is super important. And I actually think this is the perfect setup for the next story, because I think that if it trust is built through relationships, then the question becomes, how are people actually managing those relationships, and especially at scale, right? So, shifting gears, as some of you know, our organization, Net Influencer, publishes original research about the creator economy. And earlier this month, we put together a roundtable discussion, an article about, asking executives and professionals within the industry how they build their influencer pipelines. We asked them, what tools do you use to manage creators? And we got 24 responses, zero consensus. Salesforce, Airtable, Google Sheets, Creator IQ, custom build tools. And I think that honestly, that's the story. The takeaway wasn't, here's the best CRM. I think it was that customization is the competitive advantage, and the infrastructure layer is still wide open. Ni, what surprised you the most about the roundtable we put together?
Well, I know for a lot of the companies and organizations that are in front of our audiences, they tend to be agencies or folks that do a lot of different influencer campaigns, right? And so I think that aspect of our roundtable was super interesting because it showed that there isn't a status quo when you're doing a high volume of activations, right? Folks were using Google Sheets, folks were using Airtable.
Yeah.
They needed the flexibility to be able to do what they need to do. I think the answers to the question would have been different if we spoke to brands in particular might have a more kind of, cut and dry and routine process of working with influencers. But the fact the folks that are doing a lot of activations have such varied responses really shows how diverse and wide and different the workflows that are empowering the system is. And so when I see something like that, it shows that hey, there's a lot of opportunity for innovation because there's probably a lot of manual work that needs to happen. But at the same time, any platform that is going to get wide adoption needs to be adaptable enough to reflect the workflows of a wide variety of organizations.
Yeah. I think I have a different insight on that, and maybe that insight stems from the interviews and the conversations that I have. I tend to have a more human view, if that makes sense. I think that the chaos for me makes sense. I mean, I don't think there ever will be one single tool that handles everything. And honestly, I don't think we should want that. And this is why I think, again, this is a people industry. You can fully put, trust, relationships, all the back and forth into a system. The chaos makes sense to me because we're talking about human interactions. The moment you try to turn all of this into one clear workflow or a single pipeline, I think that it stops feeling like influencer marketing and maybe starts feeling a bit more like an ad buy. I don't know if you agree with Mimi.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Design capacity.
I mean, I think that having I think the diversity and the tech stacks folks are using to be able to manage campaigns is a reflection of the different types of campaigns that folks have to run. Large organizations, large agencies that are working with different types of brands, maybe a hospitality brand here, maybe a D2C brand there, maybe a consumer products brands there. They're working with different sorts of influencers, right? And so maybe if you're working with Twitch influencers, you have to use a different system to communicate kind of needs and wants and
Yeah.
and things that are due. If you're working with influencers on Instagram, that looks different than influencers on YouTube. And so again, I think it's less for me about the people because every business is about people, whether you're doing accounting or you're in sports or it's people at the end of the day that are running
Mhm.
the business. But I do think that the
Okay.
variety of the types of activations that are happening mean that the workflows have to be different. Now, if you go to an agency that does the same thing over and over again, like all we do is podcast reads and we connect with podcast hosts and we have a whole process, there probably is a very specific stack that you can use to optimize that. But if you have brands that are looking to activate on different surfaces and you have a lot of different brands working with agencies to activate on a lot of different services across a lot of different influencers, obviously that level of nuance in workflows is going to impact the sort of technology you can and want to use to be able to drive value for clients.
Me, finally, to close out the year, our team at Net Influencer also asked 77 creator economy professionals a simple question. What does the industry need to leave behind as we head into 2026? Four answers really kept coming up. Late payments, vanity metrics, broken measurement, over scripting creators. And I think that for me, this didn't surprise me. It's something that I hear every day in my interviews. What actually surprised me was seeing how aligned most participants were. I don't know what stood out to you the most, Nia, about these responses.
Obviously, AI has been the backdrop for the entire year, so I was surprised we didn't see more people say we need to leave behind this battle between creators and AI. At the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's used to be able to help people become more efficient. And most creators, or a lot of creators, are already using this in some ways. It may not be the end product you see in terms of the actual content you see, but it could be in the editing flow, it could be in topic brainstorming. It could be in kind of understanding shot lists if you're going out there and shooting on site. And so the whole AI debate, I think that's not the right debate. The question is, how do we leverage AI to be able to better empower creators and better empower brands to to work with creators? Like, let's shift that argument or shift that discussion to like, how do we leverage this tool? Because that tool is not going away anytime soon, as much as some vocal people on LinkedIn and other places want.
Me, and what about you? What are you personally just, tired of seeing at this point? What would you like to leave behind?
Well, besides the AI aspect, the other part that I'd like to see left behind is kind of the debate and battle between organic and paid, right? Those two things need to work together. At the end of the day, whether you're a brand or you're a creator, your job is to figure out how to get the algorithm to give you as much exposure as possible and pay the least amount for that. And so whether that's, figuring out how paid can work with organic, if you're a brand or if you're a creator, figuring out how you can better work with brands to ensure that they want to come back and work with you again because you're creating content that helps them get additional visibility on the algorithms, that part of the ecosystem needs to evolve because the paid teams, the organic teams, and the creator teams, oftentimes, even in medium and sized businesses, let alone large businesses, they don't talk to each other. So again, we need to bring down those walls and have those teams talk to each other to produce the best possible content to be able to drive brands and creator partnerships ahead.
Okay. I gave this one a thought. I think that what excites me the most is just keep seeing the industry grow, be more professionalized, and seeing all the people entering the space, all the activity. And yes, I'm really curious to see what the next year brings. Nee, before we wrap up, and just by the way, the whole article is available on Net Influencer for anyone who wants to check it out. The both roundtable articles are available on the website. I think that's a wrap up for this month, Big Three. Thanks so much for everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next year with more stories and insights. Enjoy the new year. Talk soon.
Thanks, everyone.